in and out of hospital, having been on death's door a few times, I think my mum almost fainted when I told her that I was going to prison voluntarily as an officer. It's difficult to say. Growing up, I used to live in Luton, so we were on like a cul-de-sac. I was in Marsh Farm. Marsh Farm is an interesting place, home of the Marsh Farm riots back in the 90s. So at the age of 4, I was like chilling out, and then I kind of had a bit of a stomachache, right? And I was like, I kind of said it to my mum. She tried the usual stuff. She tried kind of the classic Calpol, which she used to drink by the litre if I could get away with it. She tried the hot bath. That didn't work. And it was going on for 2 days, and then she tried hot whiskey. As an Irish mum, like, if that doesn't work, and when it didn't work, she was like, right, something's seriously wrong here. So she took me to hospital. I was in the local hospital for a couple of days. They were pumping me full of fluids, thinking that was kind of maybe the way I should go about it. I wasn't going to the toilet, so I swelled up like a big Michelin man. And then they realised something was seriously wrong, and they found out that I had kidney failure as a result of E. coli. So I was in hospital for initially 2 months. So that was really big. So my parents were kind of sleeping next to me in the kind of the hospital beds you get next door. Family beside my bed all the time. I wasn't able to do much. I was whittling around. But saying that, I also was still able to have a little bit of fun as I kind of adjusted. Like, I was still 4 years old, still wanted to have fun. So I remember being on the kind of on Dickens ward, so it was like the long-term ward at Guy's, and using my drip as like a skateboard. So I'd run around on that. We'd also have like water fights with the nurses using syringes and stuff like that. It's really a different world when you're kind of in hospital long term. But I think you see the best of the NHS and certainly the best of people when you're up there. So it was all going so well. So literally I was due to go home, and I kind of yelled over to my mum. I said, I've got pins and needles. And she said, where? And I said, everywhere. She said, all right, I best tell one of the nurses. And so she went over and spoke to one of the nurses, and then a couple of seconds later, like a big alarm went off, and that means that all the nurses and doctors have to rush to one bed. Turns out it was mine. So they found out that I'd contracted meningococcal septicemia, which is another word for sepsis, so blood poisoning. So we didn't quite go home on that day, and I was in hospital for another month. As I kind of advanced towards puberty, like my kidney function went down like a stone. That was kind of the period where it was like, right, something kind of needs to be done, and luckily they started to look into transplantation as kind of the only option. We went through some tests, and my father was a match, so I was really lucky with that. So I managed to have a transplant in August 2008, and I woke up surrounded by a million different tubes, but I knew that life was about to get a whole lot better. So I was lucky enough when I was 9 years old to get a call from my play specialist at Guy's Hospital, who I've known for years and years and years. And she said, would you like to kind of be interested in this thing called Over the Wall? It's like a camp for kids just like you. You can go there for a few days. Your parents won't be coming, it's just you, and you can just have fun with other kids. And I thought, I was like, let's give this a go, right? And I went there, and it was just incredible. Over the Wall, they treat all the people there just like absolute like kings and queens, right? You don't have to ask for anything, like everything is laid on for you. And most importantly of all, you're not known as the kid who's got kidney disease, or the kid with a tube up his nose, or the kid with all the scars on his belly. You're known as the kid who's really good at football, or who's really good at arts and crafts, or can make people laugh at the talent show. And that was so empowering that as soon as I aged out, and I was able to volunteer, it wasn't ever a question. It was that I would volunteer, and I have done now for the last nearly 10 years. So around this time, volunteering with these kind of vulnerable children a lot, I was really enjoying the side of the mentorship and working with them. So I started kind of combining that with my love for sport. So I picked up my FA coaching badges. I was volunteering at the local lower school, kind of working with the youngsters. Combined with that, I had an interest in criminology, like I wanted to be in the police. And so that led me to go and do a public services diploma, and eventually those all came together when I applied to be a youth justice worker in the prison service. So my first day at HMYY Feltham was interesting. It was loud. It was there was activity going on everywhere. Unlike the Victorian prisons you see kind of on TV, which are massive and their wings of maybe 600 people, this is a lot more intense for really a lot of good ways. In all fairness, in that you've got a wing of about 29 or so young people. You've got 3 to 4 officers around. There's not like there are offices, but the main wing office is kind of quite open. There's a desk there, so you're kind of interacting a lot more with the young people, and I think that was like a big whoa kind of into it. So I kind of got onto the wing, and there were 2 young people at the phones, and the supervising officer said to me, "Oh, Mr. Evans, I was expecting you." I was like, "Oh, okay, cool, yeah." I was like, "Yeah, it's Mr. Evans, me." And he goes, "Can you tell these 2 young people that they have 1 minute left on the phones?" I said, "Sorry, lads, we've got 1 minute left on the phones." They said, "Fine, yeah, cool." They carried on chatting, and then the SO said to me, the supervising officer said, "Oh, you've got another 30 seconds." We were telling that. I said, "Right, you've got another 30 seconds on the phone." I then kind of pressed the switch on the other side of it and kind of turned it off. He squared up to me and gave me this and that, and I was a bit like, "Oh, I'm really sorry, time's up." So I issued the young people with what's known as the incentives, enhanced privileges, it's like a negative, right, that goes on their record, and you're only allowed a certain amount of them with a certain amount of time on the enhanced unit, or the platinum unit as it's called in the youth estate, and so they essentially got kind of told to kind of move off the wing then as a result, and so that was kind of my wake-up call to you are in a prison and that actions do have consequences. So in the recruitment side, I was quite nervous about having had a kidney transplant. I'd been looked into going to the army at a young age, and that was a no-no, which was fair enough. But still, I was quite iffy about it, right? And I kind of went into the pre-requirement, the checks, and I had my fitness test, which, being me, went absolutely fine. And I kind of went into the doctor, into the medical, armed to the teeth with kind of documents to kind of reassure them. And the guy kind of looked at them and said, "Do you need to go to the toilet?" And I said, "What, right now?" He said, No. He was like, "Do you need to regularly go to the toilet?" And I was like, well, I can hold it in, can't I? And he kind of said, "Fine, cool, you're in." And that was that. Despite all that, and I think a few people thought I was crazy, I really wanted to do it. I saw it as a massive opportunity to work with some really vulnerable children and to show them that somebody did care. And I think when I got in, I kind of really realised that, because there's a lot of children in this place have been let down by so many people, and they're so resistant to that help. And it takes a while to build up that rapport. If I'm being totally honest, I think I was quite naive when I came into a prison. They are little black boxes, right? And it was a tough environment for sure. And yeah, there are young people in here who've committed really, really serious crimes. I actually, in fact, sat in a car park once being interviewed for a position as an art teacher at a summer camp, a version of Over the Wall, but in Ireland, right? Because I thought, oh, right, maybe this isn't really for me. But I got offered the job, but I kind of kept thinking, what if I can make it through? What if I can kind of get these skills, and if I can improve and kind of become really confident in this environment and kind of manage to reach out to kind of young people who really need it and be that figure? What if I can do that? And so I thought, you know what, I'm not going to take it. And so I didn't. I carried on, and in hindsight, I'm massively glad I did. The thing I found particularly rewarding was, I think, helping young people to do simple things, right? Often, you do get some who really will take on massive changes, but actually little changes are also the ones. It sounds ridiculous, but hearing a young person say thank you to you, or just say good morning instead of telling you to F off when you open their door, it's actually a bit of a win. There are also stuff like, so we kind of check their rooms each day to make sure kind of everything is kind of intact, there's no holes in the walls, etc., the taps work. And we also would often kind of score their rooms, so kind of to teach them the value of it being kind of clean and taking care of yourself, right? We had one young person who consistently got like a 0 out of 10, like his room was a tip. And you got to think that it's not necessarily just that they're a teenager and they can't be bothered to keep their room, but actually there might be stuff like, oh, they could have been homeless on the street. They might not be used to it. They might have had, as a lot of these children have had, is neglect, right? They haven't been taught how to look after themselves by the people who should have been kind of teaching them, right? Eventually he was able to kind of consistently get good room scores, and that transferred to other areas of his life, right? Because he had the confidence, he had the self-belief, he had the assuredness that, oh, okay, right, I can take pride in myself, I can take pride in my education, I can start, kind of doing kind of more bits in that respect. So it really, small changes would really have, in effect, big effects. And I think one of the biggest things about a youth system as well is it's really tough to think, but actually some small things that you do or that you say to them may not resonate then, but having now spoken to adults in the adult estate, often that stuff might sink in a few years later. Even though that is tough when you're youth estate and kind of in some respects no consolation, it does kind of remind you to keep fighting the good fight. I now work at HMPPS HQ, and so I work in a policy role, and it's certainly a different pace. I'm certainly not up at 6 or 7 in the morning to kind of be there for the night govs to switch over with them. But it's a really interesting role. So I work really closely with prison leaders, with your governors, and as well with kind of staff on the front line and prisoners and prison leavers too, kind of to deliver projects that will ultimately help reduce reoffending. I think it's really important that people with frontline experience go into policy. You've been there at the end of the day. You've seen just how much staff and prisoners as well have to go through each day and the challenges that they face, but also the opportunities. There are numerous places that we can innovate in the prison service and that we can really do better in order to create better conditions for staff to work in, better conditions for prisoners to live in, and ultimately to kind of reduce reoffending by increasing those rapports between people. If we want to make people into good neighbours rather than just good prisoners, we've got to invest in them. We've got to think of them as real people so that when they come on into the outside, which most of them will eventually get released, right? Let's be honest, that they do kind of, are really good citizens and are good neighbours as opposed to just being good prisoners, because nobody wants to live next door to a good prisoner. You want to live next door to a good neighbour, and you want these people to kind of live good lives, which will ultimately reduce the number of victims, which is what we're all in the game for, right?